Okay, so let's travel back in time. It's 1920. The Great War is over, but the world is, well, it's a mess. Empires have crumbled, and the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia has everyone on edge. There's this feeling of total chaos, like everything is falling apart. And in that chaos, people were looking for answers. They wanted to know why this was all happening.
And then a book comes out that claims to have the answer. It's called The Cause of World Unrest. So today, we're going to dive into this book and really break down the argument it made to a world that was pretty desperate for an explanation.
So what was the big claim? What did this book actually say was behind all the turmoil and revolution? Let's unpack it argument by argument.
All right, here's our roadmap. We'll start by looking at how the book frames the dual nationality question. Then we'll get into the main thesis, this idea of a centuries-old conspiracy. From there, we'll see the proof it offers, something called the protocols, and finish up with the book's final warning and call to action. You know, you'd think a book about global chaos would jump right into revolutions and politics. But this one doesn't. It starts somewhere else entirely, with a question of identity. The author builds his whole case by first defining what it means to be Jewish. So right from the get-go in the preface, the author sets up this major distinction. He says, on the one hand, many Jewish people will say Judaism is a religion, but he argues it's actually something more. He calls it a great and viral nationality, a race. And this framing, it's the absolute foundation for everything else he's about to say. And this is where he really lays it out for the reader. He's posing this very direct question, basically turning personal identity into a national security issue. The wording here is so deliberate, you know? It's designed to create a sense of conflict, a problem that needs a solution. So here's the core of his argument. Because of this supposed dual nationality, the book claims that Jewish people must be seen as suspicious by anyone who's loyal to just one country, and it even says that this suspicion is what people call anti-Semitism. Okay, so once that foundation is laid, this whole idea about identity and loyalty, the book moves on to its central and pretty explosive thesis. It claims that all the chaos we're seeing in the world, well, it's not random. It's all part of a plan. And there it is, spelled out right in the book's introduction. The author alleges there's this secret conspiracy, which he describes as chiefly Jewish, that's been working for centuries. And its goal? To use chaos, things like revolution and communism, as a tool to eventually take over the world. According to this text, that is the real cause of world unrest. And you might be asking, why? What's the motive? Well, the book claims the goal is to tear down every traditional power structure out there. Kings, governments, institutions, you name it. The idea is that if you remove those barriers, the general population is just left vulnerable and easy to exploit. Now, if you're going to make a claim that huge, you need some kind of proof, right? Well, the book presents what it considers its smoking gun, a very controversial document that it says lays out the entire master plan. This document is called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Now, we have to be really clear here. Historians have overwhelmingly proven that this document is a forgery. It's a hoax, an anti-Semitic text created to spread hate. But in the world of the book we're examining, it's presented as the literal playbook for this conspiracy. The book itself kind of poses this question to the reader. Is it real or is it fake? But the thing is, even back in 1920, evidence was already piling up that it was a total fabrication. But this is where the author makes a really fascinating pivot. He basically argues that whether it's authentic or not doesn't really matter. He says that because the events in the protocol seem to be happening in the real world, with the recent Bolshevik Revolution as his prime example, the document is still relevant no matter where it came from. So after laying out the problem, the conspiracy, and the so-called proof, the book has to bring it all home. It wraps up with a very stark warning about a peril to civilization, and it proposes a very specific way forward. The final conclusion is that this Jewish peril is real and has to be dealt with. But, and this is a really key part of his argument, the author explicitly warns against violent and indiscriminate anti-Semitism. He argues it would be a huge injustice to blame all Jewish people for the actions of a few. So instead of calling for some broad persecution, the book actually puts the responsibility on what it calls the honest, patriotic Jews. It's a call to action for them to publicly condemn the revolutionaries in their own community, to stop defending them, and to actively fight against any policies that threaten society. And it ends with this powerful ultimatum. There is no middle ground. The book's final message is that when you're faced with a threat like this, you can't be neutral. It's a simple choice. You're either with us or you're against us.
When you dissect a text like this from a century ago, it really leaves you with a big question. It forces you to think about how historical documents, especially proven forgeries like the protocols, can take on a life of their own, shaping how people think and fueling conflicts long, long after they were written.